this video, I want to show off some of the current miniatures I brought. Yeah, I've already painted with my metal ones I did in my last video, but these ones are different because they're made out of plastic. You see, I went over to the gaming store, and you may notice, if you go to yours, you'll notice an increasing number of Dungeons & Dragons and Pathfinder miniatures in packages like this. They usually come in 2 per pack. Usually you're 2 versions of a fighter or 2 versions of a druid, male and female. You make your pick and what have you, and they'll show you 2 plastic miniatures here, and on the back you see painted examples of the miniatures you're getting. So I got female knights of the Grey Maidens from Pathfinder. These are the backings to the werewolves that I got, and also the Nameless One from the Planescape Torment computer game from years back. And so I'm going to show them off here, and I want to talk about the pros and cons of metals. Suppose you're new to miniatures, and is there a difference between the two? Well, there is, but they're starting to converge in through those differences with better use of technology and what have you. When I got started in miniatures, I was kind of exposed as a young kid to miniatures, but to me they were just little bitty figurines. I have no idea what they were for. It wasn't until my 8th grade year I met up with a guy who had them in his home, and he explained to me they were from Dungeons & Dragons. He had the Dark Sun miniatures and a few others from what have you. Him and his uncle grabbed a few from Hobby Store in Wichita, Kansas. And, and I just kind of got hooked, so I started collecting my own. We went through, some of you may know, there's War Games West in Albuquerque, Mexico. They closed down, but we used to go there all the time because small town Oklahoma, didn't provide much as far as hobby stores go for this sort of thing, so we had to go through mail order, through a paper catalog. This was before online ordering was a thing, and what have you. So it was through them when we got, I've been hooked, and I've been hooked on them for over 20 years. But there's always been kind of plastics around off and on, depending, because if you were young enough, you'll probably remember a board game called Hero Quest, in which I have 2 copies of at home. And, they were all plastic miniatures. And, and it's one of the things I noticed, that there was a lack of detail, and I'll get into that, but there were still wonderful miniatures. But I've always loved metal, usually pewter, even though before that there was lead, and I have a few of those as well. But I want to go over this as I show off these new miniatures. I want to talk about afterwards the pros and cons of metal or plastic. And tell me what you think about it. Do you have a preference, or does it matter? So let's get into it. Okay, so let's go over the plastic ones that I got here, and I'll show you what I have, and I'll compare them to some of the miniatures while I talk about the pros and cons in general, as I will go over again. Okay, these two are these are the Nameless One. The same character in 2 different poses. For those of you who don't know, this is the main character to a PC game called Planescape Torment. He's the main character. He looks like a zombie or maybe a flesh golem or something like that, but what he is, he's immortal. He's just covered in scars, and also in the game he's described as having a lot of tattoos. So he's an immortal in the game, so he can't die, so you can, but that's going too far into it. The point is, I recognize him from the PC game, and they made a miniature of him, but you may not know the reference to that if you saw him on the shelves. So they don't have any of his other companions like Hannah the Tiefling or Mort the Talking Skull or the others. They just have him, 2 versions of him. I liked it, so I went ahead and got him. Also, along with the D&D Pathfinder line, these are 2 cool looking werewolves. I have a growing number of werewolf miniatures. I need to put them together sometime to do another slideshow deal. But these are werewolf. These 2 come in the same pack, and I thought they were very nice looking. I painted this one more or less with a few minor details, the same as a sample paint job they have in the back of the package. This one I decided to paint with a white one, just why not? So I just thought they were cool. Now, to show these next 2, these are Grey Maidens from Pathfinder. Again, in a 2-pack, you have one carrying a bow, and you have one with a sword and a shield. Very nicely done. Now, for those of you Pathfinder fans, I know that they come in red cloaks and red clothing on top, underneath their armor. I decided to go with a various color look. Here's the this one's from Reaper Minis. It's a Grey Maiden there, because they also do the Pathfinder stuff for both their plastics and metals as well. I like the miniature so much, I got it. I think it has sort of a neo, like as if the Renaissance wanted to modify Greek armor with the full play armor deal. So, and I decided to paint this one a blue because I thought it would look nice, and it turned out beautifully. So when I got these, I decided to go with a different color scheme instead of traditional red. I gave it green, gave it purple, and I think it turns out nicely. So there you go. Now, and so then let's go on with the others here. Now, a while back, I went ahead and I got a discount price of this one. This is pewter, but this is from the Eldorado range, Cardicaea, and I liked it because it's basically a giant lizard man with a T-Rex type of head, and it's got 3 claws on each arm, as if it's trying to be Wolverine. So it's a very menacing figure, nice pose and everything. But I didn't want to be alone, so I went ahead and grabbed some henchmen, so to speak, of lizardmen. This one right here is from Reaper. This is metal. I always like the design of this one compared to the other lizardmen that they have available. But for most of what they have of that particular design are in plastic. This one right here, I got at the same time as this, and it was the only one. And they don't have it in metal, so I went ahead and grabbed it in plastic. And I went ahead and gave it 2 more to add to this little set. This one I just got finished. This is different pose with the same weapons as the metal one, and this one it has a spear. So now the Cardicaea has 4 henchmen to go with it. I might increase it over time. Who knows? Now, the next one right here, off the back, you may have noticed that, I don't have autofocus on this camera, sorry, so I had to make do. This is a silver dragon. This is from the D&D line, who makes all of the new D&D minis that you'll find on the shelves today. And this one I really like. It's got a great, wingspan, and it comes with a plastic base, so y'all do. I decided to give it some grass turf right here, like it's looking in the open. This little piece right here will not come with a miniature. That is part of a small piece of terrain from Games Workshop, and I put it on my I put the rest of it on top with my Balrog miniature. I'll show off shortly. Normally you see this miniature pre-painted. It just looks like silver on top of a black. And it just looks like a base coat. It's not finished yet, So I decided, let's make it more distinctive. So instead of a black undercoat, I painted with a metallic blue. Then I highlighted with a silver, Ironbreaker from Games Workshop, and with a few mithril silver highlights, like on the tail and all that. And now the bottom scales I painted with a pearl white from Reaper Minis, and of course gave it yellow eyes. I painted it sort of a bone white to a pure white on the claws here and the wings, on its feet, and on its head. So it turned out very nicely, give it a nice distinctive look. You can see the muscular. It doesn't look like just a base coat. So I think it turned out quite nicely. So those are the new miniatures, and let's go down to a small list I have on pros and cons of plastic and metals. Let's talk about the cost, and I'll use these 2 right here, these lizardmen, as examples. Alright, so this one right here on my right is a metal, this one right here is the plastic, both from Reaper Miniatures. This is the bones, this is the classics, and the cost. Well, this one right here will probably cost around $7 or $8, depending on your dealer. That's generally the price for any human-sized miniature as well. This one right here is about $2.75, less than $3 for a human-sized miniature. That was a point that Reaper was trying to do with bones. In a small sacrifice of detail, you get basically the same miniature, and it's a lighter weight, and you can get them. It's a nice bendy. It's a bendy plastic, but it's much cheaper if you're worried about your cost. So you can probably get a lot more for your buck than with the metals. But this is only generally speaking, because if you look at Games Workshop, which are all plastic these days, you will notice that they are extraordinarily high for simple plastic miniatures. In fact, you notice that if you get basic troops, they'll be worth worth a set amount of money, and you're like, okay, I could live with that. But then if you go into like special characters or specialized units like leader types and all that, it would be extraordinarily higher, for just basically a plastic model. So another thing we're going to talk about is conversions. okay, so let's just say you have two of these, and okay, this is the plastic, this is the metal, both by Reaper. Well, no, sorry, this one is from they're both from Pathfinder as far as the characters goes. This one's the the plastic from WizKids NECA. This one's from Reaper. But say for instance, well, you like this one with the sword, but what if you wanted to give to one I have here an axe? Because it's plastic, it's easier just to clip that sword off and replace it with a plastic axe you may find fitting for it. For metals, this could be a touch harder, because you may want to get some metal clippers to do that, and some filing as well. It takes more work to, convert metal than what it would a plastic one. Sometimes it's very simple. You could just simply, like, let's pretend this one was metal. You could just clip it off and just attach it right its hand. Others, it takes a lot more work as well. Yeah, that doesn't seem like too much, of an issue. But for somebody who's already in a hobby, you may know that as it is. Now the next one, we're going to talk about weight. Now this is probably more of a major issue. Okay, so we got my silver dragon here, and we're going to compare it to another miniature I got. This is also a silver dragon, but I painted it bronze. This is from Reaper, and this one is from the new D&D line. Now, if you take a look here, one of the problems that this one has, as impressive as a sculpt as it is, they didn't give it a wide enough base, so it became a tipping hazard once you put it all together. Let me, because think about this. This plastic base I had to add because I knew that the way this is posed, the wings as high as they are, it had a tendency to fall over on it, this way. This is also another problem I had with another metal. This is from Iron One Metals. Sort of a Balrog-like creature. If you take a look at it, the metal base is right here. I had to add it to a plastic one just to keep it from tilting over, because as you can see, if you lay it down this, it wants to tilt over this way because of its massive wings. Maybe not so much without it, but it will. It more likely would do it with the wings. And that becomes a problem with larger miniatures, because if this thing tilts over on the tabletop, or worse, on the floor, even when carpeted, you may risk either, at the very least, chipping the paint, or since larger ones are generally multi-pieced, you could break the wings off, maybe the arms would come off. Sometimes with the massive ones like this, you have to pin it, where you have to drill in a hole into the joints, like say for instance the arm, put a little piece of wire in there or a piece of paper clip to, and glue it, just so it can stay in one spot a little bit better. With plastics, not so much of an issue. You got this guy right here, and I accidentally tipped it over. Well, it's not going to, chances are very least that it'll chip the paint or break entirely. Again, that's generally pros and cons where plastic wins out, so to speak. Another thing with plastic, and I don't have too many examples here, so to speak. Well, I guess this one comes close. Because you're not weighed down with the extra metal, you can pose your miniatures in all sorts of nice dynamic ways that's very difficult to do with metal. I've seen miniatures with Games Workshop where you would, they're practically in flying leaps, and with the plastic cloak, which we curl down as if it was just being dragged by the wind or something like that, but that'll actually be where it will stand by while its feet in the air. Hard to do with metal without either tripping hazard or off balance, what have you. So there's that aspect of it, where plastic sort of wins against metals. It's not impossible for metals, but it's difficult to do and maintain. And so let's also talk about the sculpts. I'll go back to my lizard man again. Now, this is generally speaking because they are improving upon this. Metals for the longest time had the highest yield in detail. You could see things much sharper, like the scales on its shoulders and what have you, than you would plastic, where you can still see the scales on its shoulder, but not so much. Not so much. You could probably put a lot more in what you could. In fact, to be honest, the Reaper Bones isn't that bad. Especially after you give a decent paint job, it's hard to look into. Now maybe in the face, this one kind of looks smooth and round compared to to somewhat sharper images of the metal. But again, that's generally speaking because they're getting better with plastics to where you can get a much sharp details. Like you say, the dragon right here is very nicely done. Well done with the scales and all that. But in the case of this one right here, I had a hard time on the leggings, as you can somewhat see, and on the arms. She has like straps on her arms, to hold up her pieces of armor and all that, and I was having a hard time trying to find it. It's not so much distinguished as, say, the pewter version, where you can look on the arms and you can see the brown stripes and the clothing underneath, much well defined. So, but then again, I've seen medals that were also not as well detailed as well, but that was just the way they were sculpted before they were, before they were mass produced. So that's in the fault of the sculptor, so to speak. So, but they are getting better with the plastics. Now, you may also see resin miniatures out in the stores, which is the idea to get you something that's high in what they're claiming to do anyway. I'm not so certain about that because I haven't seen too many of them. The resin models will be as lightweight as plastic, but just as much detail as a metal. I have a couple of the Citadel fine cast, and I, like most people, found it so very disappointing because, you know, how costly they were easy to break, and what have you. So there you have it. This is some of the miniatures I just got finished painting there, some I've done earlier, and it's a combination of both metals and plastics. Why I always prefer metal. I won't turn out a well enough plastic miniature if I happen to like the sculpt and design and what have you. So do you have a preference? Do you like one over the other? What do you like about it? Do you just do you not even care? And this video was for nothing. But hey, let me know down below. What do you think? So there you go. I'll show some slides of the miniatures I just finished of the plastics and with a couple metals mixed in so you can see them for yourself. The new D&D and Pathfinder miniatures. I'm very impressed by a lot of them, but if I can find a metal version of it, I would grab it, in comparison. But that's just me. So there you go. Thank you all for watching. You have a nice day.